everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. We have Dr. Karen Gurney. We liked her so much that we were talking about her book, Stacked, Double Your Job Interviews, Leverage Recruiters, and Unlock LinkedIn.
Unlock LinkedIn. Not unlike.
Unlock LinkedIn.
Unlock.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes.
So welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, so we were talking originally about how the whole job market works and how it's changed so much from 10 years ago, and how the whole how LinkedIn, Indeed, and this application tracking system has really fundamentally changed how people look for jobs and are found. And so in the previous video, we were talking about how that whole works, like how do you even get picked up? And it's not all that different than getting picked up by the internet, because it uses a very similar process, right?
Where it is SEO.
Yeah, it's like SEO, but for people. Like, how do you optimize?
Right.
And in this case, instead of your website, how do you optimize your LinkedIn profile, your Indeed profile, your Monster profile, so they can be found for the people who are trying to find them, which are primarily third-party recruiters, either I think I've got this right, sourcers like yourself who are finding people, or people who work within a company like Google has their own recruiting group, and they're going to be using their application tracking system in order to find people. So we were talking all about just how that whole system works and how you even can double your likelihood, or even more than that, be found. And that's what your job right now is about. Working with one of your jobs is helping clients actually go through their profiles and optimize them. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, so I have a couple of clarifying questions about that, and then I have a couple of other things that I want to dig into, because during that other interview, we also talked about how you can then, instead of like, please someone find me, how you can go out and proactively find people. I want to follow up on that too. So, we talked about different scenarios, right? Like you're right out of college or right out of business school. You are in an existing job and you just want to make some type of change, or what you call a dreamer, which is someone like, I know I've been an attorney and now I want to become an artist. You have people who are making those kind of changes, or in your case, you didn't even call it. You even describe it as a lateral, where you're working with the college dean who wants to either go in HR or in fundraising, which to me seems kind of dreamy, but you're saying, hey, that's a lateral because he was already doing that work before.
He's absolutely qualified for that work. Yes.
Yeah. So there's three different scenarios. Is the scenario any different if you're from college? You're just, how is the experience, or what you should be doing different, or does it differ?
Well, I love working with the new grad market, because most new grads nowadays have work experience, and some of it's professional level work experience, but they don't think it is. So I just actually went on a keynote to Vancouver, and I was with a bunch of new grads, and out of the 30 that have connected with me, because I offered them a free LinkedIn profile review and offered them the class.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah,
exactly.
That's sweet.
Because this is my offering to help the new grads, because I know they can't really afford it. And sometimes universities will pay me for a workshop and sometimes they won't. So in this case, of the 30 students, only one did not really have workable work experience, professional level experience.
Wow.
All of the rest of them, I can take what they've done and completely position them as an experienced new hire. And that's the key.
Oh, okay. And how do you give me a couple, because you've seen now 29 out of 30 of them. What are some examples of how you would actually, like, people are like, I don't have any work experience. Like, can you give me an example of stuff that people traditionally don't think is valid, but you're like, oh, that's absolutely valid?
One of my students she's from India, and her parents own this equivalent of a Sam's Club or a Costco.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She's been working there since 10th grade.
Wow.
But before she went to Vancouver, she was the assistant manager, and she was doing all the training, development, and hiring.
Okay.
Right? So she looks at herself, that's non-professional, it's a family business. No one needs to know that, CJ, right? That doesn't need to come up.
Yeah.
In fact, I often have new grads, and I actually with all my camps, oh, we didn't talk about location last time.
Okay.
Like, so this is a location is very important in recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
Other than keywords, and then actually titles usually come second, although your keyword could be the title. Other than
Right.
keywords, the next thing they look for is location. And often it's only 30 miles from a particular zip code.
Right, which that
Very
shocked
close.
me. So, because they
Yes.
figure that if you are 30 miles, that means that you're going to be able to commute. You're not going to have to go through finding a new area. Maybe you won't like it. All these different things, because they want you to hire you and then have you stay. And so, anything that is makes it unlikely that you will stay, which includes
There,
moving and that stuff, right?
yes, there is a statistical link between attrition and distance to work. Over 30 miles from work or over a 30-minute commute, there's an 80% chance that that person will quit under 2 years.
Wow, where's
If
that
that
stat from?
It actually came from HR.
Wow.
My HR directors they examined their results, like who's leaving and why, and who's staying and why. And they found that their relocation candidates even more. That in this case, they were looking at their directors, their VPs, and they
Wow.
found that the people they brought in, the challenge, particularly in that industry, it was healthcare and hospitals, is that because that industry has grown so much,
Mm-hmm.
people were able to stay, they were able to rise to executive level without moving.
Mm.
That's not common in
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing, in
Mm-hmm.
academia. If you have a director or above level role, you have probably moved cities
Right.
in your lifetime.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So what was weird is in healthcare, this was an executive level nurse. Her last income was $180,000 per year.
Hmm.
And that's really high
Right.
for that field. And she had been able to live in Cleveland and work for the clinic for 30 years.
Wow.
And so now she's on the job market. There's no jobs available in Cleveland. If she wants to work at that level, then she's going to have to go somewhere else. And that's happening a lot in the healthcare industry.
Okay, got it. So let's say she decides she has a grandchild that's in LA and she decides, well, I'm going to move to LA. So what would she have to do with her profile so that she would seem attractive to
I
be
love
within a
this.
30 mile?
So the key to the profile is to list yourself as living where you're applying.
Okay, so I'd say I'm living in Los Angeles, even though I'm not.
Yes.
Okay, but then they see that I have a phone that is like a area code for Cleveland. Um,
Area codes don't matter anymore.
okay,
Okay. They don't.
okay,
They're
okay,
irrelevant to recruiters and they
okay.
don't even track them anymore. People
Wow,
don't know
that's
even.
interesting.
Yeah. So that's one, unless we're really talking about extremely lower level, but even that,
Right.
because they really want the people making less than 30 to be close. If you're making less than
Wow.
$30,000 per year, they want you practically on top of the business because that statistical link increases exponentially because they have no money to get there,
Right.
or they might
Okay.
take public transit. I mean, so it depends on your workforce.
Right.
But what happens is they list that they're there, and then I have them manage the conversation on the phone.
Ah, okay.
So remember, recruiters are searching by location too, so they're doing a passive search. They'll call up the person and say, "Oh, we saw you for this job,
Right.
and you're in LA." And you say, "Well, I'm actually in transition to LA. I have." This was a great explanation.
Right.
My daughter just had a new grandbaby, or you
Right.
might not want to say grandchildren, but I have family that just moved to LA. I want to move there too to be near them because one of the biggest messages that I have people work on in their interviews is expressing that they have a support system. Because
Right.
if you don't have a support system, HR gets really scared
Right.
that you're going to leave.
Right.
Yes.
I'm going to move to LA and then figure it's so different than Cleveland. The people here are all shallow. Hey, no offense, LA. But let's say theoretically,
Oh my gosh. I didn't say it, but it is
just
very different.
hypothetically.
It is a different
Yeah,
environment.
so you're like, it's so different. I may not like it. So you're like, that's kind of a risk to have a transplant because I don't know how likely when people transplant over that they like the soil that they've transplanted in, if they wither and die, or if they like stay. But I'm sure HR professionals have those stats and they say, yeah, not very good. So, but if you have friends and family, then higher likelihood.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you don't have yourself listed in that place, you're never going to get the call to begin with.
Right.
Unless
Right.
unless it's director level of above, and you will see, like I in the last episode that we were talking about the
Yeah.
demand planner,
Yeah.
all of his jobs were across multiple states. I mean, he was interviewing, his last job was in Ohio, he interviewed in Chicago, he interviewed in North Carolina. I mean,
Wait,
he was
but how did
everywhere.
he do that then? Because he had a zip code in Cleveland or wherever, and he wanted to go all over. How did you do that?
This is important too. So I optimized his account.
Right.
But what was critical, it turns out, and this is something that if we were talking to the new grad market, that I would say is important, and it's important to other people too. It is nice to get a big name on your resume.
Right.
Because 10 years ago, even though both companies were huge Fortune 500s, which that's who needs demand planners anyway,
Right.
the first company he was spent 10 years at was Pepsi.
Okay.
So when he asked the recruiters what they searched for, they didn't search for OI, Owens, Illinois. That's where he was working. They searched for Pepsi, even though it was old. It was
Okay.
10 years old.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So you said you were getting calls at Microsoft?
Yeah.
Yep. Those
Okay.
big names, GM, GE, Pepsi, Coca-Cola. It's just something where someone can say, hey, I know someone who worked in demand planning there can do this job.
Ah, I get it. Okay, so for him, given his job title and where he did it at Pepsi, he wasn't all his geographical link all of a sudden was less relevant than and his probably his job title, which was elevated at a certain level. But you're saying from like I just graduated from UCLA, you know, the likelihood of that person getting a job in Cleveland really small unless
Zero.
so if I'm an undergrad and I don't know where I want to live, I could live in San Francisco. I could live in Seattle. I can live in New York. I could live in Chicago. So what do I do? What do I do when I put my zip code?
I usually well, once again, I have them place their profile there because then, especially if they have work experience, like this one young lady I was talking about,
Right.
um, we can still optimize and we still may be able to get hits off of
Right.
a passive search. I will say the passive searching recruiters are not necessarily looking for new grads unless it's a really hot field like data analytics,
Right.
big data analysis,
Right.
programming. Oh my gosh, I mean, programmers just flying off the market, digital marketing. There are certain fields that they are really hunting for new grads because there's nobody with the experience.
Ah.
Yeah. So that is one thing. But if they place themselves in that market and show themselves as there, because they're not, if you're director level or below, in most cases, they're not going to pay for relocation.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So any of my new grads out there hoping that a company is going to pay them to relocate,
Yeah.
anyone less than director level or above is highly unlikely that they'll
Right.
get a
Yeah.
relocation
You're
package.
dreaming. You
Yeah,
don't expect
exactly. It's
that to
dreaming. It's
happen.
dreaming.
Okay. Okay.
What's funny though is for that unicorn in the last episode, the production supervisor, they were
Yes.
paying for reload.
Wow.
If they found the unicorn, they would pay.
Right. Okay. Got it.
So
But
and
that's a rarity.
it is rare.
So then what do you do? Do you put like four? I know you can't do it in LinkedIn because it probably confuses them if I have four
You can't have
profiles.
multiple profiles.
Yeah, I can't have multiple profiles. But in Indeed and Monster, can I put one in LA, one in San Francisco, one in?
Yep.
Okay.
You can use a different email address and run campaigns in multiple places. Once again, I didn't add that to the book because that's really it's starting to get a little I mean, I'm worried that someone's going to go crazy with that because the other thing I'm going to tell them is especially if it's a new grad, they're going to have to interview in person.
Right.
So I usually have them focus on a 5-hour driving radius. So
Okay.
someone from Cleveland is 5 hours from Chicago. Yeah, you could throw Chicago in there. You could throw Pittsburgh. You could probably get away with Philly, New York City. That's 8. Washington, D.C. If you're within driving distance and you say you're from that place, you can keep acting that way. If you can jump in your car and get there for the interview.
Okay, got it. But like even Seattle to San Francisco is far away. Like, it's an hour flight. So like that, and it's maybe $200, right? So to fly over there back and forth. So you could kind of do it, but it's probably hard if you were to do that. I'm thinking. Okay, I get it. Okay, but San Francisco, LA, you could do San Francisco, LA.
A
That's
lot of talk about the swap. A lot of my clients from California have swapped back and forth over the years. between
Right.
San Diego, LA, and San
San
Francisco.
Francisco, right? So that makes sense. Okay, got it. So, so then that applies particularly for college because they usually don't even know where they want to live. Probably seasoned employees, people who are doing career changes. What else would shift during, aside from the things that we talked about? Like now you're trying to get picked up by recruiters. Is there anything else that you want to think about with respect to loading your data when you think about those three scenarios?
I want to think about what's hot. So here's another example. Let's say I had a process engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and he could pursue engineering, but that's quantitative heavy. He could do data analytics, and he'll actually make more and have a more stable career over
Mm,
time if he
mm,
repositions himself. I
mm.
would do both. In this case, I would run both campaigns.
Right, and just see what happens. Because he has the chops to do either of those things. He has
Yep.
the analytical chops to do either. Isn't that fascinating? Okay, got it. And then, so how about people who really, like, they said, well, I worked as a waiter and then I worked as a retail person. Like, those are the typical kinds of jobs that people have. Sometimes they have these, like, illustrative internships, but oftentimes it's like, worked as a waiter, I worked as, how do you make those interesting to a potential job? Um,
So if someone has, that would be almost nothing, although I will tell you that they work with point of sale systems. Sometimes I'll leverage the technology they used in
right.
the restaurant.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll move them into corporate restaurant. I mean, so it depends on the candidate whether that makes sense or not.
Right.
But okay, let's say I do have, an example of one of the students that I met, and he has a 3-year gap. He did have HR experience, but I don't think it was very good. Just
Right.
based on talking to him, like in the Canada US market, that's not going to be considered an equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do with him is I'm going to position him for a hot field, and we're going to leverage his quantitative, right? It's an
Mm-hmm.
MBA program. So I'm going to focus on either finance or accounting or data analytics. I'm going to position him as a new grad. I'm going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly I avoid this,
Right.
but we put their education first. Under education, you put specialized classes, and
Mm-hmm.
you put classes, and then you put specialized projects, and you do a list of class projects, and you keyword stack them, keyword stack, okay?
Okay.
And then
Got
if
it.
he did have restaurant experience, I'll put additional work experience at the bottom to show that he works, and then also
Okay.
reports, things like that. But we don't focus on it except to say, yeah, I balanced work and school at the same time, even though this work is not necessarily where I'm going.
Right. Okay. Got it. So it's really looking at the particular coursework that he took and the projects that he did and kind of blowing those out. And so if he
Yes.
was an engineer, though, there's probably not a lot of data analytics he was doing, but there's probably analysis that he did. So are you just filling that stuff in?
Actually, I mean they do have a lot of analytics. So I will maximize it. And I'll tell you another frustration that I have with universities, okay? And
Mm.
students. I'll combine them both.
Okay.
I'll just throw it both out there. Is a lot of times there's degree programs for which there are no jobs,
Right.
or there are degree programs for jobs that are not in the area. So I'm going to give you an example. I have a candidate, and this is, see, sometimes the candidates go down a path and they get kind of lost there,
Hmm.
and they don't know what they're going to want in the future. Exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
This candidate had a meteorology degree from a Southern Ohio university. Then they
Okay.
went and did a master's degree in Iowa, for meteorology. She gets
Okay.
done with the meteorology degree, and she says, "Oh my gosh, there are only 3 places that hire. They're related to the military, so she has to be near major military bases, which are not in Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, there's no military bases here, pretty much.
Right.
There's little outposts, right? But we're not a
Right.
military town.
Wow.
So then she realizes when she graduates, I want to be near my parents. I want to be near my family. I want to be near my friends. I
Right.
don't want to go to
To
this place."
military post.
Yes. Right. Well,
Oh
she probably
gosh.
okay with the dudes, but yeah,
Right.
the point is that so she came to me. Actually, her mom sent her to me,
Yeah.
and I knew her through her brother's ex-wife. I mean, this is pretty funny.
Right. Yes.
But they came to me and they said, "Is there any way that I can work in Cleveland?" Because she wasn't going to be on air. Okay,
Right.
that's another thing. But this wasn't journalism.
Right.
So it turns out in meteorology, forecasting is data forecasting. It
Oh,
is
right.
data
Yeah. You're trying to
analytics.
looking like, oh.
Yes. I stripped out all the meteorology of her resume. So this is another thing. Where we neutralize place, I have a lot of people take where they did their work off,
Right.
neutralize location, and I'll often neutralize words like, okay, oh yeah, that controller,
Yes.
she was working for a firm that actually developed karaoke systems.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yes, when I opened her resume the first time, CJ, I almost laughed because the way it looked, even though I knew she was controller and I knew her
Right.
experience, it looked like she was selling karaoke machines out of her garage. I mean, it just, the word karaoke devalued everything that
Or
she
don't
did.
even include that. Oh.
Yeah, even though it was a multi-million dollar business,
Right.
right? It looked like something out of the garage. And the moment I opened it, I'm like, I know what's wrong. And she was like, what? And I'm like, it's this word. This word has to go. It makes no sense whatsoever. There's no one wants to hire this. This was in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh God, I love
So
it.
there's no music, there's no sound like we were talking about that
Right.
one woman. I mean, that doesn't exist in Columbus.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, we stripped industry words. We
Right.
focused only on accounting and finance terms. And
Right.
man, she was able to switch jobs. My meteorology, I'm not saying it wasn't a haul for my new grad. I think it
Right.
took 5 months, which is longer than I like.
Right.
By the way, we didn't talk about time averages, but it is 3 to 6 months on average to get a job.
Okay.
With the coach, on average, it's about 4, and the
Okay.
outcome should be better,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, but I want people to know they probably can't beat those averages.
Right.
It is rare for me to move someone under 3 months. And a lot of people are senior, and I'm like, think about when you hired someone, how long did it take?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies hire by committee.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to get 4 senior leaders in the room together on the same day to
Right.
interview that person.
Right.
That's a 3-month process.
Right, absolutely, because it's like come and meet these three people, and then you're going to have to come next week and meet these three
Yeah.
people, and then those three people have to talk to the other three people and agree, and that's like a month
Right.
later, and then they have to
Imagine.
like agree on the benefit package. It's like that's a month and a half from the
Right.
time that you walked into the door for a large company. If you're a small company, that can all happen within like 5 minutes.
It can't. And if the job is hot, so I actually moved a creative director in under 30 days in Chicago. He was
Wow.
one of my fastest moves ever.
Right.
Once we optimized, because we were talking on the last call, the graphic design, he
Yes.
had this graphically pleasing thing that would never show up in any applicant tracking system on it. Indeed would be like, yeah.
Oh no.
So I optimized for what he was doing, which was amazing stuff. I mean,
Right. You're
not,
saying his resume wasn't being picked up because he looked like a cool resume template and
oh
like it
yeah,
got
it was
stripped off
hot.
and nothing. Yeah. So the whole
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned it because I've had a couple clients like, doesn't this look so much more compelling? I'm like, yeah. Why don't you use that? But I think it makes sense if you were giving a printed version and you're meeting someone, it's much more compelling. But the way that this stuff works on the back end for like they don't know you from Adam and they're going to strip you down to like
Right.
characters and like no lines, all those kind of things. Okay, interesting. So that's basically like a almost like a rebranding in some ways. Like I know you're a meteorologist, but really your core skills are about like data analysis,
Yep.
trends
Data.
analysis, and let's
Yes.
actually highlight those things in the
Yes.
resume as opposed to like looked at weather patterns, or whatever, where people
Right,
are
exactly.
like, what? Or
I got rid of
yeah,
all that meteorology language. And then we have a volume thing. There's a volume. So I had her apply for every data analytics job in Cleveland because that's where she wanted to move back to.
yes,
And she had like a lot of phone screens right in the beginning. Actually, she did really well on the phone screen.
yeah,
But then she had 3 in-persons right away, but they were still wary. I mean, the new
yeah,
grads, you're still not sure.
yeah.
But then she got placed in 5 months, and I'm still very happy. The only thing I could say for her is she could have started sooner, and I tried to
Right.
push her, but she was working on her master's
You mean
thesis.
started
No.
sooner, meaning like applying for jobs, like just starting the funnel, the whole process. Like you have to
Start
open the
the
funnel,
funnel.
keep on applying.
Start the funnel. It's a sales process. Yes, it's a sales
Okay.
process.
Okay, got it. So that's a new grad scenario. How about for people who are like you call the dreamers? Like what would they have to do when they're moving like from one? It sounds like the similar kind of thing. Like in her case, it's a dreaming. Like she's wants to stay in Cleveland, so she took her meteorologist and like reposition. Sounds like a kind of a similar process for the dreamers. Is that right?
So this is what I love. So on the Dreamy Career thing, what we really technically call that in career coaching is the complete career change. That's
Right. Yeah. I'm
one
a
of the things
lawyer and
that
I
we
want to be an
specialize in.
artist. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but Dreamy could also be, we started talking on off, when we were off about people that say, oh, I want to work for, Mark Cuban from Shark Tank,
Right.
right? That's another Dreamy.
Right.
So my goal is to get people calls. My goal is to develop a professional profile that's going to catch the attention of recruiters on the passive search and also for their active applications.
Right.
So that we're hitting both. That's the double your job interviews because we're doing two different
Right.
campaigns, the passive and the active. So the key is most people in my experience, DJ, are happy with the career change they get leveraging their skills.
Right.
They just have to open the door to what that looks like.
Yes.
So, for instance, I'm working with someone right now who's working in a help desk. It's heavy phone work. She wants to be off of it.
Mm-hmm.
She's thinking something totally, like she's telling me, although it's still IT, she's trying to gain SQL skills, like she's taking classes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that she's trying to do this, except she already has technical knowledge that if she searches those keywords, she'll find maybe analyst roles, like things that get her off the phone.
Mm.
And that will be a complete career change for her in her body, how she feels, what her day looks like, what she's making, where her career goes is totally different. But to the employer, hey, this person's coming in with all the skill sets that I need. To them, it's a
Right.
lateral.
Right.
Yes.
So you're looking at that person who's like, I just don't want to be on the help desk. And you're like, let's look at all the skills that you have and where you can go. If we actually
Yes.
say, here's like, this is not a 360-degree shift. This may be a 45-degree or even maybe a 90-degree shift. But let's see if we can shift you by just taking your existing skills and then seeing what's available. So you would take her existing skills and see, okay, here's like a 45, 90-degree. Do these look good to you? Because these are plausible. I can take your profile and make a switch. And then
Yes.
she looks and goes, I would love to do an analyst position. That's exactly what I was looking for. And you're like, okay,
Yes.
great. That I can work with. But like,
Yes.
I want to be, if she's like, I want to be a sky jumper. You're like, okay.
Right.
Or I want to work for Mark Cuban or whatever. Where it's like, yeah, like that. Maybe that could happen, but you've just decreased your likelihood of that. Just by focusing only on Mark Cuban. But if he said, what I really want to do is do finance, and I would actually like to work with a smaller, like someone who is like a reputable brand, then you're like, that I can work with, right? But
Yes.
the kind of Mark Cuban, I have to work with Mark Cuban or John, whoever it was, John, whatever, the guy in Canada.
Robert Hovernick.
Robert Hovernecker. Yeah. That's kind of harder. Okay, I get it. All right, got it. So those are the different things that you'd have to do for your profile when you're loading it into these systems. Those 3 different scenarios. So now let's actually go into, you were talking about a passive and active. So now I'm actively going like, okay, I want to work. In the previous video, we were talking about the scenario of someone who is like, I want to work at Google. I want to work in Google sales. So that's a very specific thing that they're looking for. And so in the previous video, we were talking about, okay, well, the first thing you need to do is connect to as many people as you want. And then after you connect to those people, try to connect to the people that they're connected with. So I used the example of my husband who knows people at Google. So I'd connect to Gideon, and then I would connect to Gideon's connections and say, hey, would you connect with me? And given that I know Gideon, they probably are going to like, yeah, okay, I'll connect with her because she looks like a credible person. And then the whole process multiplies. That's what we talked about.
If your profile looks good, a person will be absolutely shocked. I have only had, when I've done my campaign, I have over 3,000 first connections, and I told you I have over 300,000 second degree possibles.
Right.
I've only had one that reached out to one of our co-connections and say, hey, is she legit? Only one time.
Right.
Most people just connect, or they don't say anything.
Yeah, because I've had people go to me in LinkedIn and they connect with me via LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. Like, you work in the military. Maybe it was one of your friends. I mean, I don't know that you're looking for. He's like, worked in the military. Maybe he actually is a good fit. I'll look and see if he's a good fit for the job that you have.
There you go. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. But so, like, I was like, who is this guy? I don't know who he is. But I'm like, okay. I'm like, looked at his profile. I'm like, I probably saw one of my posts, thought I would like to be on this person's feed. Okay, except. The ones that look kind of scammy and scary are like, "Hi, I'm from this different country and I want to help do offer IT support." I'm like, "No, thank you, ignore." Or ones where like, I don't know. I've never had the I've had Skype where there's like a scantily clad lady and I was like, "No,
Yep.
thanks." I'm also
No
not going to get
stalkers, no
Yeah,
strippers,
no
right?
stalkers, strippers, but like everyone else I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Okay, so let's say that I actually am interested in working in Google sales. And so it seems like there's, first of all, you can do queries, right, to find out the job postings that are in those
Oh, I
systems.
love that. We didn't necessarily talk about that.
Yeah,
So let's say you've done your job and you've gotten connected to that company. So
right.
you've opened up this universe of second connections because
Yes,
once you've got Gideon and you've got those, then you've got even more.
right.
Okay, so you just keep connect, connect, connect. Okay, then you apply for a job. Of course, this is another thing. When you see a job online, apply for it actively.
What
Like,
does that
don't just
mean?
rely on the network. So, meaning I see the sales job at Google that I want,
Hmm.
apply for it, make sure you're optimized, of course, and done
Right.
your work. And then you reach out to your network and say, hey, I just applied for this job. I think I'm really qualified. Would you be willing to network with me on this role?
Okay, got it. So you want to do the twofold. So when you say, so let's say that, there's a director of sales position at Google, and I think, so I'm actually, somehow I found the director of sales position, so I want to find out how I find that, because I've never used those systems. So how do first of all, how do I find that system? Like, how do I find,
So,
let's say
advanced search.
yeah, like let's say that I am would like to be a director of sales in high tech, and ideally Google, but I want to be a director of sales in a high tech company. So I would like do some type of query. Is that right? In Google,
Yeah. You mean how do you find people
yeah,
who hold that role in a current or the VP
sorry.
of sales,
So
maybe?
I'm going into Indeed. I'm going
Yes.
into LinkedIn. I am going into Monster, and I know that I would like to have a director of sales job in
Okay.
high tech. So I can set up queries, right? So
Right.
find out about
Yes.
job openings that fit my
Yes.
criteria. Is that
Yes.
right? And I can actually
Yes.
select locations too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can have a lot of job alerts running. I usually, for my clients, set up customized job alerts. You don't want to rely on the automated system because the intelligence is not as good as the person's intelligence.
Right.
Once they've done the core three and they've identified the keywords and the titles and the places or things,
Right.
then they can go ahead and search based on those query. And Indeed is much better for this.
Hmm.
Okay. And one of the reasons Indeed is good is because it's an aggregator. It pulls from multiple sites, while LinkedIn only shows companies that paid LinkedIn to advertise their job. Well,
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
if you're like Google and and you work in Google HR
Hmm.
recruiting and you're going to post that job, you're probably going to post it both to Indeed and to LinkedIn, right?
A big company probably will.
Okay,
Yes.
but then a smaller company has to say, I can't afford to do both. So I'm just going to post it to Indeed because I don't have to pay LinkedIn a fee.
That's right.
Okay. So then Indeed probably has more people.
Potentially.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Indeed's done a much better job. It is by far, I know we focus a lot on LinkedIn and it is important, but Indeed, for job getting purposes, is the most important website right now.
Okay, got it. So I will go into Indeed. Let's just use Indeed hypothetically. I go in and say I'm interested in director of sales at a high tech company, and I fill out like the titles, and then will I get like a pretty good query? You had said like I wouldn't actually rely on the query only. What did you mean when you said that?
Well, what I'm saying is, I director of sales maybe would work,
Mm-hmm.
but for instance, when we were talking about my workforce management guy, I'm really gonna add in keywords about the technology he uses.
Okay,
So, for instance, a lot of sales roles want Salesforce.com,
right.
and if you have that, you can really get better hits on your apps.
Okay, got it. So if I just put Salesforce.com as one of the skills that I have, I may get some more interesting things that I would have if I didn't put that in.
That's right.
Wow. Okay, got it. So I have to actually be pretty smart about those queries because otherwise I may actually, just by virtue of not me putting it in that query, I'm going to be screened out for things that maybe not be director of sales, but maybe related to sales. It's just a different title than the one that I use. So you use the skills as a way to do a catch-all for stuff that may actually
Yes.
fit what you have and you have the skills for.
And
Okay,
then you
got it.
set up a job alert. So you set up a job alert so that you're getting consistent updates on what's coming onto the job market.
Okay, got it. And that's how you can, I assume, also screen for different geographies too. So if you were like if you were in Cleveland, you wanted to work in LA, you'd be able to see those because you actually select the geography that you want. Okay, got it. So then let's say I see like a job alert pops up, director of sales at Google, and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I would apply online, and hopefully someone would find, like someone who's recruiting for that position will find me. I'll also apply online, which then that information, I guess, is that information off, or like where does that information go? Does it go into the application tracking system for Google?
If there's a quick apply, it goes into their system. If they probably don't do quick apply at Google, only because they get thousands of applications. So they're using their applicant tracking system to really create hoops. So for the most serious applicants,
right?
Whether I agree with that or not, that you will see the hot companies doing that. They won't do the quick apply. Okay. It depends. It depends on the role. But oh man, there's something that you said that I just lost my train of thought on something that was really important about recruiting, and now I don't know. But yeah, so like for instance, the Cleveland Clinic gets 4,000 applicants per job posting.
Wow.
And
okay. And that's a quick apply, which I'm not familiar enough, but I assume like in Indeed I can hit quick apply and then it just downloads it. And what was the thing that you just found out?
Oh no, wait, it just wait.
No!
Wait, it'll come back. But there's something so important here that I have to say, and I'm trying to think of what it is. Okay, but keep going. It'll come back.
Okay, so I actually see a job. It looks interesting. I click apply, and then what that does from Indeed is like pre-populate.
This is a different topic. So here's another thing. If you do a quick apply, it's going to, especially Indeed, and LinkedIn, if there's a quick apply option, it uses the profile that you have already out there and sends it to the client. And I do a volume campaign at first for the clients. You want to get your app out there. You want to start having that phone ring, okay?
Right.
Even if it's not exactly the job you want. So, oh man, I have to get a notepad here and write everything down because I keep losing my train of thought here on this stuff. But then what you can do, because I think this is where you were going with it, then you can use advanced LinkedIn to start reaching out to people that you applied for those jobs. So there's where there can be a combination. I don't know if that's where you're going with it.
Yes.
But so we have quick apply. Oh, direct apply. One of the things I wanted to say is employers, remember, they're adding hoops. So when it's internal, when you do a direct apply, it's internal. And I just remembered it. Oh my gosh, I have to remember these two things. Your core 3 job search. This is my personality assessment based on your labor market skills and the match in the market. Okay. This is how you use Indeed to find jobs that are available to you. That skill is going to uncover recruiters. In our last call, you said, how do you find these recruiters? Mm-hmm. Your search can produce recruiters.
Oh.
So even though you're doing the passive, and even though you're doing active into the HR company or directly into the company, during that search, you're going to see recruiters out there. Like for my workforce management guy, I found recruiters that are recruiting for those jobs. They are more likely to pick up the phone and talk to him because once again, recruiters are looking to make the third-party recruiters looking to make their commission. HR is looking to talk to the least amount of people possible,
right?
Because the more people they talk to, the more trouble it creates for them,
right?
Really,
right.
I call it creating a mob of angry people,
right?
And the third-party recruiter doesn't care about that. I mean, I'm not saying once again not to be mean, but they just won't pick up the phone. I mean, they're hunting for their person,
right?
And once that's over, So, but for direct applications, so HR is trying to limit how many people they see. Mm-hmm. So now they've created skill-based questions, and you'll see this even on the quick apply on Indeed, CJ.
Oh.
So these are problematic, and I actually talked to the Society of Human Resources about this at a conference, and you could hear a pin drop because once again they're trying to limit. They're like, I can't take 4,000 applications. I have to figure out some way to limit my pool. Okay. Mm-hmm. But let me give you an example. This was an internal candidate. He was working in the transit system on he would plan the routes for the handicap. You know how the handicap unit is, it's mobile. It doesn't have a fixed route.
Right.
The person calls in and says, oh, I need a pickup. I need to go to the store today. Right. And the handicap unit goes and gets them. Okay. Right. So This is actually a type of logistics planning.
Right.
So he wanted to move over to the area that does that more for the whole bus line, right?
Right.
It would be a promotion for him. It'd be great. When he went into the applicant tracking system, I mean, this is for the own company that he works for.
Oh my God.
It had skill-based questions, about 10 of them.
Right.
One of them was, do you have a bachelor's degree in public policy or equivalent?
Why would you need that? Okay.
Mostly they were asking, do you have a
Okay.
bachelor's degree?
Right,
And they
right.
picked, right?
Right.
But this is my problem. This is my
Right.
problem with these skill-based questions. So he answered no because he had an IT degree and
Ugh.
he didn't think that was an equivalent.
Oh wow.
So he went through it. They didn't call him for the job. He called to HR for his own company and said, hey, I applied for this job. I don't really understand why I'm not a candidate. And they said, oh, let me pull up your application. They're like, oh, you answered no to the bachelor degree question. Just
Oh
change
my
it to
God.
yes and we'll interview you.
That's why in the book you say whenever they ask you a question, just say yes. Because if you say no, it's like an algorithm that is going to screen you out for some
Screens you out.
random reason. Unless
Yes.
it's something that is truly like no. I assume you say yes in all cases because otherwise
Well,
they're trying to screen you out. Like
right,
if they
of
say
course.
like, "Are you a drug addict?" You're like, "No."
No, that's not a skill-based question. Right. That's not,
Oh, I see. Okay, you're saying skill based, so they're literally questions that are skill based questions. What other kind of questions are they going to ask like
like,
that?
how many years do you have doing logistics planning? And in the job ad, CJ, this is hilarious because I do the quick applies all the time
Yeah.
for my clients.
Yeah,
It'll literally list in the job ad 2 years mandatory.
right. So
If
you
you
just
don't
put
answer,
two or above.
yes. And what's funny is the HR person doesn't even remember setting them.
Right.
They're just,
No.
Now I will say, I mean, we do have to sometimes add a little caveat here. If the role is looking for a CPA and you don't have one,
Right. You
then
can't
that's
put-
just, yeah.
right.
I
You
mean,
can't
because
put
it's
that
not
in.
going to work in the end.
Right. Right.
Right.
Right. Because they'll be like, you lied to me. But then at the
Well,
same time,
yeah.
like if they have a lot of like CPA experience, they don't have a CPA, but they have all the relevant experience. You're saying because an HR person checked that off on a box. No, I'm going to be screened out, even though I'd be really good.
Well, I know, and it depends, but here's an example, and man, is this a quandary. My clients, well, I usually won't sign a client actually who does not have work visa authority just because I'm not in my integrity if I do that.
Right.
Someone who does not have what they call an employment-based green card support or family-based green card, right? They're on a temporary work visa, and as we know, immigration is not
Yes.
really welcome right now, but it wasn't great before either.
Right.
What happens, and this is great, man, the employers are smart, CJ. So I have a client who's making a killing in San Francisco. She got into one of the H-1Bs. She did. She's a data analytics person. I mean, making more than most Americans I know. Okay. And she's from Poland.
Right.
She's on an H-1B, and fortunately or unfortunately, depends how you look at it. Her husband, who's also an H-1B, is moving to Chicago. His job is getting moved.
Right.
She thinks that she's going to be able to move to Chicago and have that H-1B transfer. I
Right.
don't believe it will.
Right.
But here's what's the problem. When we apply for jobs, they'll say, do you need visa support right now? Technically, an H-1B transfer does not have a cap. But what the next question they're asking is, will you ever need support in the future?
Oh, well, of course you will. Oh, wow.
So if she says no, she's lying to them, and they call it, even though she knows they won't consider her. But I'm like, you have to decide if you want to play that game.
Wow.
Because-
yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, God. Well, that's so okay. I get it now. All right. So I want to get loop back because I had a couple questions. I was not going to interrupt you because I knew that it would like lose the two critical points that you wanted to tell me.
Yeah.
So now I have to go back. Okay. So you said how you can find recruiters is if like you hit their radar, then you can find them. How would I know that they're recruiters? Or, you mean they'll call me, or how would I find them?
They don't sound, so when you're doing your search, I mean, I know I see this a lot more.
Yes.
They don't sound like a company name. They
Ah.
sound different. Sometimes it literally says staffing or recruiting. Sometimes it does.
Oh.
Other times it's like a person's name. Like a lot of these old style, those recruiters that are in the 100-person recruiter.
Yes.
Sometimes it's the family name. I mean, this has been a family business for 50
Right,
years.
like Washburn
So
Recruiting or whatever. They'll
John
contact
Smith
you. Yeah.
recruiters. Yeah. And the
Okay, so if I
funny thing
see
is,
someone like, so someone will contact me from John Smith Recruiters, is that what
yeah,
would happen? Ah, so
the fun,
they
it,
contact me, like they would say, I want to interview you.
well, what I'm trying to say here is sometimes you ask me, how do I find recruiters that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
playing
yeah,
my ballpark?
yeah, yeah.
Your Indeed search will find a lot of them because
Oh,
third-party recruiters will advertise jobs too to try and
oh,
catch
okay,
candidates.
I get it. So like, I'll see
Okay.
them in my list of jobs. So it's like I'll see Google, and then I'll see John Smith Recruiting. I'll be like, who's what? What's
But
that? Ah,
what's funny is most candidates, CJ, don't want to deal with a third-party recruiter because it feels less serious. It's not the internal recruiter. That's one of the things my book changes. I
right,
can't put on there on the title of my book how to work with third-party recruiters. Like, no, that doesn't draw attention.
right,
But understanding that these people are going to make a commission. If you can be a direct hit match,
right,
they will climb mountains for you.
right.
But you have to be a direct hit match for an open job requisition that they have.
Right. Okay, got it. I totally get it now. Okay, got it. And then we talked about the skills based question. What else do we need to cover? Um, all right. So now I'm actually trying to find someone. I go and like contact all my contacts. I actually have a active search where I put in the queries and I'm going to get some of this stuff. So I get a query. I then try to like contact all the people I know to circle the wagons to increase my likelihood of getting through.
Right.
And some of those people, but you're saying even if okay, so I actually find a job at Google Direct Sales. I know Gideon. I contact those people, but like still that doesn't like that increases the likelihood. Who by how much I don't know, right? Because Google HR is look at my application, which may be a perfect match, is sitting in their database doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So then so I'm basically with the active search, I'm kind of increasing my likelihood as well. But it's a numbers game, it sounds like.
We definitely need volume and we definitely need to work all angles. I'm not telling anybody not to tap their network or work their angles. All I'm saying is that's one piece of the puzzle.
Okay, got it. So then I've hit both sides. I've hit the
Yes.
active and passive. And then once
And
I
your network, your personal network.
okay,
Yes.
got it. So at this point, like by the time I do all of that, I'm exhausted. I can't even meet anyone for lunch.
This is why I can't believe more people don't want to pay me for this. It's worth the money, in my opinion.
I,
Just keep the campaign up and running.
Okay, so how does someone work with you? They would call and say, "Hey, I'm interested in working with you," and they would like you would work with them and like gather some information, try to figure out what the campaign is that you would be running. Is that right?
Yeah, at this time, my primary candidates I have contracts with the recruiters, the outplacement,
Right.
but the private clients, I really like them to come from my book or my class because
Okay.
they really get what I'm doing. It pre-qualifies me as the right coach for them.
Right.
So I just had a candidate like that in Georgia. He bought the book, he reached out, he emailed me, and I said, "Hey, send your resume. Let me make sure I can help you." And then I send them my package. So I'm like, "Listen, our phone call is free, but this is what it would cost if I can show you that I can help you."
Right.
And then we schedule a call, and I tell them exactly what they're going to do. I make sure their expectations are right. If they tell me they want to work for Mark Cuban, right?
Right. You're like, "I'm sorry, we can't work together," or like, "Here's what we
Unless I
can
can
do."
reset their expectation. Unless I can say, "Hey, listen, you pursue that on your own. I'm going to optimize you. You can use that resume to contact him, but I'm not going to be able to help you with that contact."
Right. Right.
Right.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So they go over to your website, Karen
Yeah.
Gurney, KarenJurney.
GUR. You keep saying J.
Why do I say that? Gurney. Can people read this since I can't read
Oh, you
letters
can read it.
anymore? Okay. And so they go over your site and then they can contact you there. Is that how they actually contact you? And they fill out their information and they can work with you as a private client.
So, as we talked about, anyone who buys the book gets the online class for free. I'm giving away my $200 class.
Yes.
In the class, the first thing you see is I invite all of my students to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I respond to everybody personally with a free profile review.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, wait, you could. So because I have the book, can I get a free profile review
You
on my
can.
own? Oh, gosh. I love you. All right.
So one of my questions is going to be, what's your goal?
Right.
In your case, it may be client getting. It
Right.
may be to develop your podcast audience.
Right.
And this is the same thing for job getting. Like sometimes a candidate is completely lost, has no idea what to apply for. So their help is, I need to figure out where to go.
Right.
Other people are like, hey, this is the type of job I want. I'm happy with my career. I want to be a CFO. I'm just not getting calls. Okay, that's a different conversation.
Right.
Like I'll look at the profile and say, okay, what's the problem here? What are we missing?
Right. I'm sending all my clients to you when they need to do this stuff. Seriously, it's just, I don't know why you wouldn't do this. It seems like it would just save so much time and energy, right? Because I assume what it sounds like you're doing is you're helping them actually write the resume. So like some people hire resume writers. You would help them write the resume. You would help them set up the queries. You would then help them when they have to do a quick apply. You'll show them how to do that, or they can do it on themselves. I don't really understand that part, but.
So I optimize their online account. I get them all out there and set up their entire campaign, their entire passive campaign, but it also helps with active because they're out on Indeed, so they can, use that to apply. They have their resume. They can apply through applicant tracking systems. I train them on how to work with recruiters. I train them how to get through a phone screen because it's very unique.
Right.
10 questions that are very important.
Right.
And then I'll also set up the behavioral so that they understand what they need to do and the questions for them that close on the job.
Right. Got it. Right. So that they're really fully prepared, that once they get the call, because you've actually you're sitting on the opposite side where you're like, I've asked these questions. It's probably shocking that these people are so ill prepared. Why don't you prepare yourself before you call?
That's what's another funny thing. People are like, oh, I don't want to memorize. They hate, HR will hate that I prepared. No, they love it.
Yeah.
HR is like, oh my God, you prepared for the interview. It is hard for someone to imagine how many duds these HR people go through. Like the recruiters that I talk to in my network, if they pick up the phone and even hear the voicemail, it's like, oh, leave a message, just it's immediate. They won't even leave a message.
Right. Because they're like, I don't like that person's voice.
Right. Like there has to be energy. There has to be vitality.
That's so funny.
Interviewers have a hard job, and it's
no, I get it. It's like, please don't bore me to death.
Yes.
Because a lot of people do. What's funny, because the thing that I do with my coaching is I help people get trained for interviews. Like I literally have had people say, can I send this person to you? Because they've gone through all these interviews. Like they make it through the door to get the interview. So they're getting like all these interviews, but they never make it to the next stage, which means just the interview. That's the problem, I think. Yes. I try to diagnose when I talk to them. And then I go through interviewing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just awful. And you have to work with them. And then literally you coach them for the interview. They prepare and they get the job, or when they're prepared, it feels like they get into like final rounds, whereas before, like it's not clear whether they would even get that far because they're not prepared for the interview, and they do awfully, right? So it's good to get prepared. So your videos on your website will talk about interviewing too. Is it all the aspects that are in this book?
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. So we've been talking to Dr. Karen Gurney with a G.
Yes, a G.
We're talking about SAC. Thank you so much. Just fantastic. Loved it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me again.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.